Hello, everybody. Good afternoon to all of you. I'm Ashish, the founder and CEO of MASH. It gives me a great pleasure to moderate a special panel discussion today as we mark the World Mental Health Day. The mental health is an issue, which is being really being neglected for many years, but is thankfully now coming to light. And with many important key stakeholders stepping forward to highlight this cause, I thought what would be a better occasion to convene a group of thought leaders, change makers, people who are really actively working on these issues and making a difference in the lives of many. So on this occasion, as we focus on mental well-being in various aspects of life, we're going to talk about how mental health affects us today overall, but specifically at workplaces today, and how organizations can be, are addressing these issues, and what more can we do about that. So we have a fantastic group of panelists today. So I won't take much time to quickly introduce them. First and foremost, I have Soumya Menon, who's the Chief Growth Officer of Infotainment at One India. Hi, Soumya, how are you?
Hi, Ashish, and thanks for having us for this very important discussion.
Thank you. A quick introduction. So Soumya leads the One India strategic growth efforts. She's been driving innovations across the platform, and she has a, great experience being in the media sector. And she has been shaping One India and the group's overall mission in creating engaging and a very community-focused platform that prioritize mental health, emotional health of the audience. So really looking forward to the conversation, Soumya, today. Next, we have Parinita Ganesh. Hi, Parinita. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Great. Thank you for joining, Parinita.
Thank you.
Parinita is a seasoned mental health professional with a wealth of experience offering counseling and training to various individuals, groups, corporates, and nonprofits. She has been a part of different organizations, including HEAL, which stands for Help Eradicate Abuse Through Learning, Shelter Don Bosco, and Justice and Care. Currently, she runs a private practice in Mumbai, where she continues her impactful work in mental health, providing support and guidance to many those who are in need. Thank you again, Parinita, for joining. Next, we
Thank you
have
for having
Dr.
me.
Kedar. Thank you. Next, we have Dr. Kedar Tilve. Hi, Dr. Kedar.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Hi. Yeah. Loud and clear.
Great. So Dr. Tilve is a consultant psychiatrist at Fortis, which is also, by the way, one of our partners for this initiative today. And he specializes in stress management, performance optimization, and general adult psychiatry. He has been passionate about raising mental health awareness and regularly conducts workshops and seminars in schools, corporates, and various other organizations. Again, thanks, Dr. Kedar, for joining us, and again, for supporting the initiative at Verse HealthPlus. Next, we have Samir Sharma, who's the co-founder and CEO of 365 Care. Hi, Samir.
Hello, Ashish. Hello, everyone on the panel.
Great. A quick introduction about Samir is that he has been instrumental in integrating global care practices into India's elder care sector. In addition to his leadership at 365 Care, Samir is a partner at A3 Consultancy, which advises clients on various business strategy and healthcare areas. And he has been overseeing various financial governance, business strategy, and he's very passionate about healthcare sector. So thank you again for joining us, Samir. Next, we have Manisha Soin. For some technical reasons, she is not able to join us on video, but I hope, Manisha, you can hear us.
Yes, I can, Ashish. Hi, thank you for having me on the panel.
Thank you, Manisha. And
yeah.
Sorry, are you saying something, Manisha?
I was just saying a big hello to everybody else on the panel too.
Amazing. So Manisha is the founder and CEO of AICA Health, AICA Health, and she's an experienced leader in healthcare consulting and disease management, and has been skilled in developing personalized digital health solutions. Her work focuses on chronic care management to enhance mental and physical well-being, particularly within the corporate setting. So I think each one of you has so much wealth of experience. So let's get deep dive into my first question, which is common to all the panelists. So since we are marking the World Mental Health Day today, and the focus is on mental well-being at various aspects of life, but specifically, it's coming to some of the recent incidents, there's a lot of focus on mental health at workplaces, right? So what do you believe are some of the most critical factors that can ensure a good mental health when it comes to employees' well-being? And how do you think, organizations, can take care of it, especially focusing on people who are designing policies, who are building some of these programs ensuring mental health for the employees, right? So I'd like to first begin with Soumya. Soumya, if you'd like to go first, yeah.
Thanks, Ashish. So, as a content, we are in the content business. We are talking now in about 14 languages across our group, right? So the focus for us when it comes to mental, when these guys is that to make sure that this conversation goes beyond English. A lot of us are historically, we've always topics like mental health, personal well-being, growth, support systems is such a highly English conversation. Even the terminology and vocabulary only largely exists in English. I'll break it down in our day-to-day lives while we are going about news headlines. Is a simple issue like burnout, which we have been all grappling with in the last few months and days, has been, gets so generalized into मुझे थकावट हो रही है in Hindi. मेरा मन नहीं लगता है हिंदी में. So, and when you do that, you kind of take away the sense of urgency from the problem and therefore getting the necessary support for it. So we are trying to make sure that this kind of conversation goes beyond English. That has been our focus, especially post COVID. That has been a big focus for us. At least there has been, I'm quite confident to say that in this group that there has been an awakening to these issues post COVID, but it is largely relegated to English cities, tier 1 cities. We are trying to make sure that these go down to Malayalam, this goes down to a Tamil group, this goes down to a Bengali group. We are talking how can we spark these conversation post a Wayanad landslide. How did that impact people lives, groups, communities? How did it impact people in coastal areas of Bengal when the typhoon hit? Because what happens is we have kind of usurped ownership of this in English, right? We also are sitting here, we are all going to be talking about it in English, right? So these first is to make sure that there is a conversation, we spark the conversation. Second of all, we make sure there is ownership by creating the right terminology around regional level issues, not talking about, always talking about, while it's important to talk about a burnout happening in the corporate structure, someone in Bihar may not understand why we are so obsessed with it. They need to understand how it affects their education structure in their region, right? How it has impacted teachers, how it's impacted their jobs. So therefore, talking to the right people after that and talking to them in a language they understand. That is our responsibility, and we take that very seriously.
Thanks, Soumya. I think you started the discussion on a very important note, which is accessibility, right? And language plays a very important role, and conversation like these should not be siloed. So I know we are having this conversation in English, but that's where technology, role of media platforms like One India, like Daily Hunt is very critical to have that last mile reach and making sure that everybody is made aware, everybody is feel inclusive and part of this broader important discussion. So thanks for bringing that. We'll of course come back to you for more discussions. I'll go to Parinita next with the same question. Parinita, over to you now.
Thank you. And Soumya, I think you've brought up such an important aspect of what probably I have to deal with in my private practice on a daily basis, which is to create accessibility to people who may not always have, may not always have the opportunity to even consider mental health as, as an important aspect to consider in their lives. What it essentially, points to is decolonizing a lot of our ideas of mental health and and accessibility to various mental health programs, etc. One very important thing that I have learned in my private practice is that and I am practicing in Mumbai, and I guess I am working with a very small population of our country, which is English speaking. And people who are in the corporates. So I will, kind of lean into that space because that's where I work. And what I have understood is that, one extremely important psychologist in my life is Esther Perel, who's an international couples therapist, who says the quality of relationships determines the quality of life. And I think one very important part of corporate life is also determining the quality of relationships, interpersonal relationships between people, whether it is, between a manager and their team, or it is inter team relationships, because there is so much competition today, that has to do with, me getting better, me, climbing that unrealistic ladder sometimes, I feel like. And I think there is such a big part of the the workspaces that also kind of deal with people as a means to an end, which is, I don't know, maybe profitability, maybe, I don't know what it is, but we have to start accepting the fact that they are real people, and we may not always know what their backgrounds are like, or what they might be going through in that current moment. So I think it is important to foster healthier relationships, at least encouraging healthier communication, conversation, relationships. It could look different in different organizations, but I think that is one of the key things that we could concentrate on.
Got it. Got it. Thanks, Pranita. I think so. There's some very, very strong points that you've raised, especially around, when we think about relationships, sometimes we only think about personal relationship. I think with professional relationships, especially, we're spending so much time, sometimes more time at workplaces than we spend at with our families, homes, and especially people who are, working at remote locations as well, right? And we don't really often talk about that. So, I'm very curious to learn more about how we can build that, where that can who, who's actually responsible to begin that conversation. Is it employer, is it employee, and what steps we can do? So we'll come back to that, but I'll like to hear from our other panelists. So Dr. Kedar, would you like to go next on the same question?
Certainly. Decolonizing with respect to languages. I'm already learning better words and much better ways of putting it across. So I will talk about something which requires our attention. So a minute to digress. The cultural importance of work in India is summed up in one line. You cannot be stressed about home. The last time that I met a person who genuinely admitted, Curate, I'm concerned about a festival coming up and the sort of attire that I'm supposed to wear, versus the same person coming to me and saying, Ki, I am stressed about deadlines because I have to reach home early. They're talking of the same thing, but the cultural connotation is it is more easier to talk about workplace stress. Even as kids, we are trained to talk about our academic stress, more acceptable to us rather than stress about how the situation at home is. I'm talking with this as an purview of we are going to screen people quicker, and we are going to pick up the beginning of anxiety and depression quicker because of the people that we work with. Because it is actually more acceptable to say, Ki, all right, I might be stressed about things and I'm not able to concentrate. And if you can pick this particular point up and make it a screening tool, we are going to end up picking things up much more quicker than when they are reaching a stage where self-harm is contemplated or substance abuse has kicked in. So on the spectrum, we will pick it up very quickly. The other important aspect is the red flags that we get are more likely to be judged by the people you work with, because you work with them in the same set of circumstances for at least 7 to 8 hours a day. So any change in behavior, the subtle changes in behavior actually get picked up very quickly with the people that you're working with. Uh, if my staff doesn't warn a patient कि injection लगने वाला है, I know कि they are stressed about something and they are preoccupied with something else. This is true for every workplace. So the red flag will be very, very unique to the workplace that you go to, and you will pick it up quickly. So that is one thing that we have to remember: the importance of screening. And like the conversation was going, the awareness has increased. But what we also need to remember is the awareness of mental health has also increased. So a lot of people suffering from latent conditions who got through their college, who got through their degrees by sheer willpower, when they actually start coming into the workforce, they will have transitions, they will have a lot of different dynamics to understand. So focusing on transitions and actively screening for mental health concerns might actually be a extremely bold step in ensuring better mental health care at workplace.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kedar, to share some again very important aspects, especially from your experience, clinical experience. Very interesting point you talked about that people around us probably have, you know, see the symptoms before anybody else does, right? But what do they do? Sometimes we may see people around it, but it's not like, I think still there is a great degree of gap in terms of what do you do, like for against versus any other physical illness or other injury. Hey, what are the first aid to give or consult a doctor. But when it comes to mental health, I think even people are surrounding, even at your home or workplace, don't know what's the next step to do, or is it even the right thing to talk. Even if you're talking, then at what degree of the other person is facing issues. So I think those are some very pertinent questions people have, and we'll come back to you on also this: how do we empower people around, like your support system around you, right? I'll come to Sameer now, and Sameer, same question to you as well. So over to you.
Thank you very much. I think let's look at it from two aspects. First is from an employer aspect. Now, I got clients out of Scandinavia, and among other performance indicators for individuals, there's a KPI which I love there, which is the happiness index. How happy is the environment of a group, of an organization, and even their relationships with their external vendors or supporters. Now, so from an organization's perspective, I think at some stage, India will have to start picking up the happiness index, because only when this change comes from the top is when that would help a lot of executives, young executives who come into corporates, in terms of ensuring that workplace is a happy place. That's where we enjoy, that's where we have fun, that's where we collectively win goals. So changing that reference point of a workplace, I think that's one. Second, India is going through a transition, and a huge one. I think the best metaphor I can give would be that now we have expressways, and we also have Maruti 800 on those expressways. Now, unless and those Maruti 800s, those who are driving it would love to drive at 120, 140, but the engine is not right. Likewise, in corporates, I think a lot of people, they drive themselves to burnout level out of ambitions. They have to change their engine, the driving force. The driving force should be those collective goals for which they are there. And then suddenly it helps in the perspective, it helps in the approach, and it helps in that person to remain efficient over a longer period of time. I, India definitely is changing, because today we are talking about these subjects. Also, a lot of people are more expressive about it, and I believe that when I was young, I used to be. I was always told that, meditate. You work 18 hours a day. Meditate. It would help. I would not realize, and I remember I used to have my bouts of burnouts, after which I would go for trekking or something every 6 months. Meditation is an amazing tool which we have out of our civilization. The more we'll explore, the more our younger generation would explore, we would realize it helps us in remaining uh, an outstanding performer over a longer period of time. So, I mean, I would say it's both ways. From an employer's perspective, as long as the employers start focusing on the happiness index, and also from the individual's perspective, wherein individuals change the reference point of driving them, which is not ambition, no shortcuts. It takes time. Work on your goals, find your team, go hunt, and have fun. And I think that would change the scenario in the longer run.
Thanks, Samir. I think very interesting points that you've raised there. That it's again a lot of burning out happening because of people. People have that, always the pressure to achieve more, right? And also when you see your peers, colleagues, competitors doing better, so then that kind of like also comes all the more onto you. And definitely, I truly believe that meditation has a very important role. That I think workplace is one of the things they can do is like you have a lunch break, you can have a like a meditation break where you just cut off from everything, and till the time you don't make such policies that help you forced to take those, you also don't realize the value of it, right? But yeah, I think those are some very interesting points you've raised, and we'll come back to some of those again. Next is Manisha. Manisha, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Ashish. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So, workplaces is where we actually spend most of our times. If I look at my own selves today, I spend 90% of time, with my team versus my family. So these are relationships which are important. So as people who are really setting out policies, I think it's important to be cognizant of, the impact of a workplace on your mental health. And the least we as companies can do is start by promoting open communication. People should feel open, not to discuss their problems, have open dialogue, have a platform for sharing experiences. That's something that I would start with, because if you can't talk, then the stress level really builds up. The second is, having flexible work policies. With COVID, we all realized that we could work from home. Sometimes people genuinely have problems and are not able to travel to work. So, can we really have hybrid workspaces where people can come and go and, work? Working out remotely is largely about trust. It's not about, that people don't contribute. Of course, there's a culture that needs to be built in, and that comes a lot easier when you're sitting in person, but it's important to have flexible work policies, in my opinion. Then, what kind of mental health resources do we have for our team? Do we have counseling services? Do we have wellness apps that can actually help them sort of, go through their journeys non intrusively, remotely? Can we train our teams, to sort of or to be more aware on picking up symptoms and stuff, which is going on with their younger teammates? Do we encourage sort of breaks and time off? Do we say that, okay, you've actually worked 72 hours this week, how about taking a Saturday off and just saying that, okay, let's just chill out? Can we actually build a culture where people go on, for example, treks together, or you have a mindfulness session where you can all sit together, meditate, and that sort of relieves you? Can we create a supportive environment? A supportive environment is not just, like you have a larger organization like Google, and you have quiet spaces for relaxation, especially in the US. Can we incorporate elements which are more tuned to our culture as well, which is natural light, a lot more greenery? For example, if I'm stressed, I feel that, when I go out for a walk, it just clears my head. If I go to the gym, it just clears my head. So can we sort of say that, it's okay, you've been sitting for working for the last 5 hours. It's a mandatory walk break. Just do that and come back. Can we organize wellness programs for our teams? Can we work on fitness for our teams? Because nothing beats fitness. Fitness is the starting point of all preventive care. So if you're fit, you're healthy in the mind, and everything else starts to fit in. So these, I think, would be my top pointers for policyholders, makers, to sort of say that, these are the suggestions that I'd like to make and see that these should be implemented in workplaces, so that workforce, has better mental health.
Thanks, Manisha. I think some very simple but yet very effective ideas that you have proposed. And
Thank
I'm also thinking, like how in the social impact sector, we all often talk about that doing good is actually in the larger interest of the business. It's not just giving away, but it's kind of comes back, to your bottom line. So while you were mentioning some of these points, I think like if you focus on employees' well-being, fitness, it is a good business practice, right? So if you make a strong business case out of taking some of these measures, and investing on well-being, so if business sees that long-term value coming to back to them, I think the adoption would be much much faster and much higher, right? So I think we just need to maybe think of some of these ideas and educate our decision makers, right? So
Yeah.
thanks again, Manisha. So I'll now go in a reverse order and probably start my first question with Manisha you itself, right? And Manisha, we during our previous interaction and research, we found that you've developed a personalized digital health companion for chronic care management, right? So, do you
Yeah.
see the role of digital health solutions playing an important role in preventive care, particularly when it comes to well-being and mental health in workplaces? And how can we, look at some of these digital solutions?
Sure. So, first thing is, Ashish, what do you really mean by preventive care? So, preventive care, also known as prophylaxis in medical terms, is a type of routine healthcare where the aim is to prevent or detect health problems before they become serious. So, this is what preventive care actually means. So, the goal is to reduce the likelihood of somebody becoming seriously ill, disabled, an untoward incident, or a more serious ailment. Now, as ICA, as the name suggests, is an artificial intelligence based care assistant. So we are a solution with deep intelligence, and the minute we have a user profile, it's the deep intelligence in the solution that starts to work based on the trigger points, based on your user profile. For example, if somebody, so let me take the case of somebody who's just overweight. A lot of people are overweight nowadays. I think 90% of us have some or the other weight issues. Now, being overweight is not as simple as it sounds. It puts you, if you're a woman, it puts you at potential risk for PCOS, which puts you at potential risk for infertility, or difficulty in conception. It puts you at potential risk for having excess hair. It puts you at potential risk for having BP, thyroid, diabetes, joint pains, and the list goes on. And except the infertility bed, or the difficulty in conception, or the PCOS, men also face similar problems. Now, if you're somebody who's like overweight, we say, okay, this is where you are. Then the solution starts to nudge based on your profile. You have an age, you have a weight component to it, and then there are other parameters. And we say, okay, this is where you are, and this is probably the kind of diagnostic test you should be running. Now, based on the results from your diagnostic test, for example, if you're a thyroid patient, we would suggest a few things. For example, if you're a patient who just needs lifestyle modifications, we will say, okay, maybe this is the amount of steps, this is the number of steps you should do. This is what you should do in your fitness routine. You should do weights, you should do, cardio, you should do flexibility, mobility, and, so on. Similarly, for example, if somebody is diagnosed, somebody is a blood pressure patient, we would say, okay, these are the additional tests that you should get done. And based on the diagnostics that we have, we will again trigger the next loop. It could again be lifestyle modifications. We may ask you to get yourself tested for thyroid. We may ask you to, your A1C get done, which is your glucose levels. If you are already a diagnosed, diabetic, then we would say, okay, are you actually monitoring your glucose levels continuously? If you're not, or if you're pre-diabetic, or you have high insulin resistance, we would just suggest that get your testing done once in 3 months. Now, as I look at this patient spectrum that we have, you'll be very surprised that people, even with thyroid, people haven't gotten their thyroid retested in like 2 years. It's a surprise. You're technically supposed to get it done once in 6 months, if not once in 6 months, at least once a year. But preventive care in India is so dismal. People just don't look at it seriously, and that's where we come in. We not only help you manage and monitor your own health with ease so that you stay healthy, we also help you do that remotely for your loved ones, and hence offering you near seamless care. So does that answer your
Perfect.
question?
Yes, absolutely. I think thanks for breaking that for us, Manisha. So I'll come to now to uh, Samir. Samir, so my question for you is in terms of your expertise with the healthcare sector, and I think you've also, as a investor entrepreneur, worked across different sectors. So how do you see the again bringing the question about technology again? Be more used widely at workplaces, which helps to reduce the work related stress versus adding more of that, and it engages with better employee engagement among the team. And how can we make sure the decision makers, be it your HR heads, be it your at a CXO level, can understand the importance and the value of it? And then, like I said, if we can build a strong business case out of it. So can you share some thoughts on some of these areas?
Absolutely. So we all know technology brings scalability, but then more importantly, it brings accessibility. And what I mean by that is today workplaces are not confined to a single address. A lot of times, lot of workplaces or a lot of employees are probably in 20 locations across the world. At times they are in different cities, at times they are in different geographical zones, and so on and so forth. Now that's where technology comes in, uh, wherein employees have an access, and HR also has an access to employees in terms of uh, creating some records wherein they are able to highlight some red flags, as Dr. Tilve had said earlier. Now, also, what's very important in this case is to understand we have all heard of elderly helplines, we have all heard of suicide helplines. How about a burnout helpline within the organizations, wherein employees are able to speak up? A lot of times, people do not work for the companies, they work for their bosses. Most of their interaction is with their immediate boss, not with the top boss. The top bosses may be in their own utopia, but then what about their immediate bosses? People may, most of the times, they have problem with their immediate bosses. Who do they speak to? And someone who listens, someone who is able to also help them in that situation. Now, creating these environments within the organizations, also having a virtual tool which helps employees, whether it comes to keeping a discretion or maintaining their uh, confidentiality, probably for some time till they are able to open up and come out and say things openly. I mean, we all have whistle blowing processes within the organizations, primarily focusing on the commercial side of the business. What about whistleblowing on the burnout side or on the mental side of it? Because employees run organizations, it's never the other way around. And once we have the right tools and the right technologies for these organizations, then those formulas can be replicated across different organizations. I mean, I am working with the government of India on an elderly helpline across the states. And uh, my biggest challenge in that is that I tell the government that, you know what, it's not enough that someone picks the phone. How are we able to help them? That last mile support is very important. So it's not just about listening, it's also about sharing with them a possible solution, and also helping them at least initially. Now, within the organizations, HR can really play this role in a beautiful manner using the technology. We have companies where we have employees in thousands and thousands and lakhs actually. Unless we use technology, we will never be able to keep a tab on individuals, on groups, and in terms of making an efficient and happy environment within the organization. So I believe technology is going to be one of the biggest tool which can be used, which should be used. I also see in future a lot of companies are going to come up with some technological solutions on these burnout helplines, on these mental support helplines for the companies, and they will be pitching it to their HR, saying that, this is our tool, and if you want to, if you become our member, then your employees will have access wherein discreetly They'll be able to share, we'll share the feedback with you as HR, so that you can guide them through, make a roadmap for them as well. A lot of organizations lose good employees because those good employees have someone as their boss who is not understanding of their potential. So I mean, it's a loss at the end for in the end for the organization as well. Uh,
Right.
right. So I mean, we are going towards that wherein we would have a solution which could be posed across to the organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir. I'll come to Dr. Tilway now. Dr. Tilway, as a psychiatrist who's working in both clinical and corporate settings, what are some of the mental health risks associated with chronic stress at workplace? What we want to understand a bit of risk, and what could be the preventive, easy to adopt preventive measures that you think at a company level, at a workspace level, that can be adapted to create a better, more, better mental health culture at the organizations?
Right. Ashish, so this is a two-part question. The first part is what are the effects of chronic stress? And quite simply, the stress diathesis model points to the fact that any sort of stress persisting for a long time will end up precipitating a mental illness condition which you are susceptible to. So it most often is anxiety and depression. Um, Many times because of the stress at workplace, it also tends to precipitate the substance use disorder. It sets off the cascade for alcoholism or well, other drugs. I will not mention them, otherwise we'll run out of time. But it does that. It in some extremely susceptible, vulnerable individuals, it might cause impairment in the reality testing, cause a frank breakdown, development of psychosis, or development of self-harm tendencies can end up. And this is just the mental health aspect. I'm not even talking of the mental wellness aspect, where the concentration is going for a toss, where the drive is going down, where you go on autopilot, not wanting to look at any sort of enrichment for your own personal growth. And this is what chronic stress can do to you. Now, you were talking about what we can do for prevention. I'll start off by taking up Samir's point, which was extremely well made, the importance of an helpline. And I'm proud of this. So I'll hijack this and say that Fortis does it. It's run out of Delhi. It started as a 9 to 5 helpline when I joined the mental health program, which is run under the leadership of Dr. Parekh. Started this as a 9 to 5 helpline. Okay, a stress helpline. We called it stress helpline. Then there was a scenario of the blue whale where we actually went 24/7. And now we are doing this round the clock. And what we realized was we did not require too many resources. What we required was the psychologists who were working across the Fortis group actually came on the helpline, took slots. As a result of which, we now have an helpline which is confidential, which is toll free. And you mentioned the language, and we usually speak it because it's an pan-India presence. So the forum and the platform need to be assessed properly, and there are solutions for this, and it helps along with other great helplines that are there. This is one of them. The other thing we can do for screening is give the confidentiality back to the person looking for the screening. I always mention that a snitch in time will save the mind. So I'm all for people who have report protocols. But in the end, the crisis that develops in your own mind, if you have a very small way of assessing a virtual program or a virtual software, which can screen, which can predict the sort of wellness level you are at, even mental wellness, is extremely helpful. There are screening questionnaires available which can be scored, which will tell you the level of illness. And these are usually confidential one-to-one talk scenarios, which will not involve even the HR. And I'm saying this specifically because many times the employee does not perceive the HR as being the point person that they will go to for a mental health concern. HRs are great resources for bringing in people to the mental health thing, but if you want to actually make it an all-inclusive one, the other vertical where your employee is able to assess the healthcare service when they want to will help. EAP programs help in this regard when it is advertised and televised properly. Virtual health helps. Artificial intelligence is growing it, runs, and we are developing it. We are a part of it, and it helps a lot. And I think it's going to bridge the need and the demand very quickly. Uh, all that said, it comes down to conversations that leadership has. And if the leadership can be open about the experiences they had, about the transition difficulties that they had and how they got over it, or what sort of access is available and how they got access to it, that actually normalizes things very, very quickly. It is usually there are no new problems at the workplace. Yeah? They are just newer version of older problems. So one person above you in the hierarchy, one person below you in the hierarchy, and the person parallel to you has probably seen something of that sort. So if that conversation is had, and if these people will tell you, all right, we went through the transition, we went through the problems, and this is the people we reached out to, this is the uh, programs that we have at our workplace to help run it, and reduce the stress that you go through, that would be the way we prevent it and break it quickly. But if you only focus on prevention, we will miss out on the people who are actually going through the distress. So yeah, confidentiality with the individual as the focus would help.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Kilve, for laying out some of these critical points. I know we are running out of time and there's so much to cover. We're also getting some really good questions from our audience. So I'll quickly come to Parinita. And Parinita, my question to you is in terms of as a mental health professional, how do you think more individuals can be made aware, especially people around you? You know, Dr. Tilve also mentioned about earlier about uh, how do we create awareness among people who identify some of these signs early on, right? So that's one. And second, because I'll merge two questions because we might be running out of time, it's also about self-care practices which can we as an individuals, if we feel that there's something wrong, like it's easier, like with physical health, to identify. You If you have a cough and cold, you take precautions, you take warm fluids, you take various other measures. But with mental health, sometimes you don't know, right? So what kind of self-care practices do you think we can incorporate on a daily basis to sort of deal with some of these challenging workplace situations?
Absolutely. I think Dr. Tilve has pretty much covered the first part of the question, actually. But I'll just reiterate what he happened to mention. First is going back to basics and trying to figure out what is your baseline. Uh, how much were you sleeping versus how much are you sleeping now? How much, how driven did you feel versus how driven are you feeling right now? Because while this can be you know, uh, HR led exercise, one very important thing to also recognize is, um, what is your baseline and how far are you from that baseline. It's very much connected to what Samir said earlier, which is, okay, you're on the freeway and you are driving really fast, but it's also a Maruti 800, right? And if your identity, so much of your identity is dependent on your work, and so much of your worth as an individual is dependent on how you perform, how you do well, and how much you grow, etc. Where is that coming from? These are the kind of questions that we would normally get clients to explore and kind of figure out. But again, I want to go back to what are the most tolerable steps that you can take to get back into that baseline, was your second part of the question. um, Self-care right now, look, a lot of information, very small bite-sized capsule information is still available on social media today. So you might have to kind of um, also take a step back and try to see what context you are in and what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Today everybody wants to do cold plunges, and everybody, I completely agree with meditation as being a very, very important tool for mental health. At the same time, who can and who cannot do meditation is a very important part of it. So I can list down certain things that can qualify under self care. But one very important thing to understand when it comes to self care is it's not only the things that make you feel good that is self care. Some things that you might have to do are going to be really difficult, which is like going to therapy or going and going joining a, like what Manisha said earlier, which is to concentrate on your fitness, because दर्द करता है यार, एक्सरसाइज करना पड़ता है, दुखता है, नेक्स्ट डे मेरे को नहीं करना है, मेरे को उठना है, मेरे को that sometimes doing stuff that taking steps that are really not okay, not feeling okay to do is also self care, because you're caring for yourself enough to go through that initial really difficult part to be able to go over. So, trying to think about what is the most tolerable step that you can take, that's what I mean. What is a tolerable, difficult step that you can take towards your mental health will qualify in self care. So, while some people might just talk about, oh, eat the food that you want and take a shower and take some time for yourself, sure, those are great, but those are also very small and temporary. What we have to start doing in terms of self care is, say for example, an extended period of seeking this sort of help, concentrating on your physical health to be able to concentrate on your mental health. Also, Indian context of boundaries are going to be very different from the international standards of boundaries. We can't cut off, or we can't close off, or stuff like that. Our culture, like Dr. Tilve had suggested earlier, has very different connotations about relationships. Bosses aren't just bosses; they are also very much parental figures sometimes for a lot of young people. So these are the kind of things. That's why the importance of interpersonal relationships, what I mentioned earlier, is so very important. I think I should stop here because we are also running out of time, but I will stop.
No, thanks. I think there's also a comment, Parinita, for you from Urmila Jaising. She said that somebody who's been told to do meditation more than 10 times, it's always, and she's always felt that, she's not able to sit still. So, just the point about making everything very personalized and contextualized to that person's, what works for them is very helpful. So, again, thank you for highlighting that. I'll quickly come to Samya. And Samya, I know you highlighted the point in your opening remarks in terms of accessibility, right? And somebody, again, who has been in the media and journalism space, any quick actionable strategies that you would like to share with us, that how do we make sure that this reaches a wider audience? Language is one, but are there other important measures, do you think, where role of media, role of technology is very critical in terms of creating more awareness? And also, how do we look at making more resources accessible, right? So yeah.
Uh, Ashish, so, media news, I personally believe we are in the business of empathy. We have to find that string, everything that we bring to our readers, our viewers, it's all about finding that string, right? And we focus so much on that, but we have not done enough work to empower the people who have become the spokespersons for empathy. So here at One India, where we are all but just now, I was listening to all of you and we were just talking about technology. Technology is great. It helps us make sure, we are bang on the buck and we have a great ROI and all that. But we realize that there is great opportunity in technology to make sure, we connect with our teams. So first thing, one of the things we've done at One India is we've actually created a employee wellness team whose job is to make sure, this is completely separate from HR. They make sure to bring activities, conversations to everybody. The conversation, we have to now double click on the problem. I think we have, most of us, I'm being a bit generic here, most of us at various organizations have evolved a starting point of conversations. The double click is not happening. We made it very easy to take people came to us, our team members came to us and spoke to us about problems about getting to work. So we said, okay, let's go hybrid. Great solution, right? And we are all patting ourselves on our back for that. What we didn't realize, and thanks to this team we've created, we realized that while we allowed this we created a process of hybrid working, we managed to isolate more of our team members. That coffee conversation in the middle of two meetings is so integral to well-being. You have no idea what catharsis follows that. Kisi se gappe mare, acha pata hai ye hua. That is also mental well-being. But when we allowed people to transition to work from home, that community just started disappearing at the organization, right? So our team brought together this activity, which was a great learning for us. They brought together an activity of an employee engagement program where we had music dance, but it was only for our participants could only be work from home employees. We didn't, because everybody's connecting, right? We are all here, we are meeting, gappe bhi ho gaye, chai bhi ho gaye, samosa bhi ho gaya. But the people at home, we don't even know what their talents are. What are they doing? Someone brought their kid along to the show, someone sang, someone did a skit. We had people playing instruments, and it was officially the most highly attended online event we ever hosted. And the kind of conversation which flew after that, I'm being very honest, that one activity brought more of us together. And that happened due to, just as Dr. Tilve was saying, let's take this away from HR. Let's create people whose responsibility is to take it, who are empowered to have the right conversation with the right people, and will make sure they double click on the problem. And we cannot be the solution if we have not owned the problem, right? It's so easy for us to talk in these terminology and say, well, employee wellness, but employee wellness is not big, has never been historically anybody's problem to solve. We need to make sure that the POCs are there doing it. And then, I think it does not there's no magic wand. It doesn't, as Parinita said, it's hard work. You have to give into it. You have to allow the process to take you in, and then therefore you'll get the results.
Very beautifully put together, Soumya, and I think that's a great example. Something we also always cherish, like these monthly meetups where we get the team together, and I think just do some of these fun activities. I think that those makes a huge difference. And thinking about what big policy change we need to do, right? I think that those are like baby steps, which makes some very important factors, and especially in a hybrid or a virtual work culture, it's all the more necessary. How do you bring that? The physical interactions more often than uh, okay, so I think we have about 5-6 minutes, and there are a few questions that I could see, so I'll try and see how answer as many as possible. But our audience hasn't directed those questions; they've just posted those questions. So feel free if anyone would like to take a first take on it. So for one, I see a question from Harshita who said that she says that when one feels overwhelmed at work, they often bring it up, and they are not only neglected but looked down upon for not given bigger opportunities, right? So a lot of young people are facing such issues, and something that we also encounter on a very regular basis, that people are feeling a bit overwhelmed, right? So how do you think young people who are in very early in their careers, or they probably at the first job, they don't want to feel that it's not okay to go to an HR or to their immediate managers and talk about it, right? How do we normalize this culture among especially young people, and navigate such situations? So any thoughts anybody would like to take a stand on that? You can just unmute and speak. Yeah.
I think you have to go back to basics. Conversations, as Samir said, doesn't always have to be between team and manager. You have to have conversations outside these fixed reporting structures. If you're having these conversations and you are attuned and sensitized to pick up on these issues, bubbling issues, I think you can reach out and provide the support required. It never has to be frowned upon. We have tried to ensure that we all our team leads are given a space to not to have review conversations, right? You need to make sure your team is having a conversation with the team where it is about, how do you get to work? Are you coming by metro or are you driving yourself? Do you get really edgy and irritable by the time you get to work, and therefore the first 1 hour of your life is totally taken up by anger issues, right? So you need to make sure that the team lead is, we are empowering the team to have this conversation. Otherwise, in a lot of spaces, what is happening is, ये target नहीं हुआ, how did you not miss it, project का deadline है. And it's, I totally understand, to be completely fair and don't want to sound extremely utopian, we cannot do this all the time also. It cannot be. So that finding that balance where team leads are sensitized to pick up on these cues is very good, and making sure if that person is hesitant to kind of connect and kind of nudge them. You cannot force and pull somebody down a route they don't want to take. You have to respect their personal choices also. So you kind of nudge them to ensure that they are getting, you just put your hand up and says, hey, I'm there. After that, a lot of the decision person making has to come from the other side.
Thanks,
So,
Soumya. Yes,
can
Manisha.
I also add to that, Ashik?
Yes,
So,
please. Yes.
okay. So, Harshita, I don't know where you work, but a good idea if you are actually with a corporate is to explore your insurance that you have. A lot of corporates give health insurance benefits, and a lot of health insurance has free consults built in. And these consults are typically about 4 to 5 a month. Now, these can also be for mental health resources. These can also be for regular doctors. So if you have a health insurance which offers you, for example, 4 to 5 consults a month, you could actually go to a psychologist to start with, somebody who's non-judgmental, talk about problems that you're facing, and see where that takes you. Because very often in a workplace, like you rightly said, you're judged. If your office has an EAP team, which is an employee wellness team, great. If it doesn't, just do that as a first and see if you can get benefit by way of a non-judgmental consult. And you could also continue that, because if there are 4 consults a month, which is typically the norm, you could actually explore that. Since I am assuming you're very young, you could also explore that to sort of sort out any issues that you have without even involving your office. This is just between you and the practitioner, and your office may know at some point that you took a consult, but largely it's between the insurance and you. So I think that would be a good way to start up and see that your issues are addressed. I hope this is helpful.
Yes, no, I think that's very, very helpful, Manisha. I think we're almost out of time. There are a few more questions, but I just want to ask, like, in terms of wearables like fitness trackers, do you think those, Manisha, and maybe I can ask this question given you do work a lot with digital tech solutions. So, do you think those can be helpful in kind of like getting the data related to burnout, or some kind of like heartbeat and ways to sort of have some kind of detections? And do you think employers can maybe offer those kind of things, not just for mental health, but general health and well-being of employees?
Yeah, absolutely. We ourselves are integrating with the wearables. Now, the quality of data or the insights that you get from wearables is important. We call it the digital exhaust. It could be your heart rate, and you could actually analyze that over a period of time and see where your own health is headed. I mean, a lot of us wear Apple watches today. I myself wear one. A lot of us wear Samsung watches today. We have smart rings which are on the rise, and that gives you pretty good data points which can sort of be assessed to take a holistic view of your health over a period of time. And yeah, I absolutely endorse that.
Awesome, great. Great, we've sort of run out of time. I think there are some more interesting questions coming, but I think it was such a wonderful discussion. I was constantly taking notes and points. But thank you so much to each one of you, Soumya, Parinita, Manisha, Sameer, and Dr. Kedar, to join us. I know that these conversations should not be limited to days like today, like World Mental Health Day, but I think it needs to normalize and make it part of our daily routine and culture, especially at workplaces. So on behalf of Verse Health Plus, it's been wonderful interacting with all of you, and we look forward to probably continue these conversations and make sure that we together create a better, healthier world for all of us, and create a bigger and a better impact. So thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Ashish. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You guys stay safe, everyone.